So Mansbridge set the table for him, and then now we hear Stephen Harper's response to that right
Yeah,
now.
let's hear this response.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, on the first question, I think the evidence is just growing overwhelming. This is not, as it was the case of Iraq, merely now the opinion of allies. I think the International Atomic Energy Commission, if you look at its work, there really is no secret that Iran's nuclear program has as one of its purposes the development of nuclear weapons. And that, I think, is just beyond dispute at this point. I think the only dispute is how far advanced it is and how far off it will be until they actually develop those weapons and develop the capability of delivering those weapons.
They're lying when they say they're not.
I think there is absolutely no doubt they are lying.
So Mansbridge even hopped in there to remind them to say, "Oh, don't forget to say that the Iranians are lying." You know what I mean? Oh God.
Yeah. I that's the part that just astounded me right there. My jaw dropped, and I thought, shouldn't the question be, if that's the case?
Yeah. Wait for the third part. This where Mansbridge's follow-up question to this. Right now, Mansbridge has helped him to say, without telling us what intelligence there is, what fact-based argument there is to support your contention that the Iranians are working towards developing a nuclear weapon. Without telling us any information, we can trust you, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just dismiss all of those intelligence reports because, I mean, what good is the intelligence community anyways?
No. Yeah, exactly. Like it's the same intelligence that they had 5 years ago, which didn't prove that they weren't, but it didn't prove that they were developing nukes. You know what I mean? But for Mansbridge to follow up, listen to this third clip. Now, the follow up is just what blows my mind, because what he's going to do here, I hate to spoil the surprise, but I just want people to understand what he's about to do. He's not going to say should we or should we not respond to this information by going to war. It's how come we haven't gone to war already? You know what I mean?
That's what I heard pretty much too.
Yeah, and it blew my mind.
Well, Peter, on the first question, I think the evidence is just growing overwhelming. This is not, as it was the case of Iraq.
Oops, hold on.
I mean, I've watched and listened to what the leadership in the Iranian regime says, and it frightens me. These are, in my judgment, these are people who have a particular, a fanatically religious worldview. And their statements imply to me no hesitation about using nuclear weapons if they see them achieving their religious or political purposes, and that's I think that's what makes this regime in Iran particularly dangerous.
Well, if you believe that and it scares you, why is no one doing anything about it?
It's not like should we go to war? It's like, why haven't we gone to war? You've made the case. You've made, based on no facts in this interview whatsoever, highly politicized intelligence coming out of the United Nations, manipulated by the American administration, right? Based on no information and based on your religious prejudices, we have concluded in this interview that they are building nukes and they will use them at their first opportunity because of their religious fundamentalism and basically their inhumanity.
Yep.
And then Mansbridge's response was totally unquestioning. He's like, okay, we're in. Why haven't we already gone to war?
Yeah, it's like they kind of skipped over a few layers of necessary to journalism.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He totally forgot to ask him to identify some of these proofs.
Yeah, and I understand you're going to do a 20-minute sweeping interview with the Prime Minister of this country, and you're going to have to play nice. And so you want to cover a lot of ground, and you don't want to piss him off, you know what I mean? Because he'll never talk to you again. But just, and I understand all that, but it seems like Peter Mansbridge already understood where he has to take this conversation and how best to use his own personal credibility with the Canadian people to support the HarperCon's war impulse.
Exactly. And purposeful or not, that's not the question. What this does is, for many viewers and listeners, it just leads them down a road, this unquestioning road. And now they know, as far as a lot of people are concerned, they now know, okay, the Prime Minister thinks that Iran's not only developing a nuclear weapon, they want to use it. I mean, if you're not going to think critically, and you're not already thinking critically, most people won't pick up on the fact of what just happened in that interview.
Yeah.
And they'll take it as factual evidence. So,
do you mind if we go to a track here and come back and cover the rest of this interview?
I think that's a
I'm
good
going to
idea.
play a Guided by Voices track off the Mag Earwhig album called Not Behind the Fighter. And I'm probably going to have to take off my headphones, twirl my microphone around, and bust out some white guy rock star poses to this guy.
Right
and
on,
we'll be
man.
back in a moment.
Militant babies came to me, told me don't be afraid to try. Phenomenal stuff kids in the streets, the popping out of the black dust line. This one's cracked up, Jack and Jill. You're down there in the bunker still. You look like a sniper anyway. I'm not behind the fighter jet. I'd much rather back a simple girl. I've seen your plan and it's all wet. A load of prophecies coming to me. Caught in the trap where bravery steps, a wounded mercenary bleeds. The hall of fantastic find things where the path of glory leads. Lately I think it's gone too hard, coming up with the winning card. But who's gonna beat them in their own backyard? I'm not behind the fighter jet. I'd much rather back a simple girl. I've seen your plan and it's all wet. A load of prophecies coming to me.
And that was Not Behind the Fighter Jet.
How did your rock star poses go?
Dude, that was fun. I was even pretending I was drunk.
Nice. That's a lot cheaper than getting drunk too.
Yeah, man. What else are you gonna do on an early Sunday afternoon, man? I'm just not able to get my to get into the drinking spirit this early in the day.
Gotcha.
That's for our nighttime shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to go to another Mansbridge Harper clip?
Yeah, let's keep that going.
Let's do
Let's
this.
see where they go with this.
Yeah, and keep in mind, at this point in time so far, they've already figured out, without telling us any information, that it's time to attack Iran because they are, in fact, building nukes, and they will use them because they're evil Muslims, and they hate freedom, and they hate other religions. Here we go.
I actually think there's a growing consensus, at least privately among world leaders,
well, what does
that
that
this is
mean?
the case.
Well, what does that mean? I mean,
Well, I
trade sanctions have been tried, haven't worked.
Well, I wouldn't say they haven't worked. I think there is some
Well,
real
the goal still seems to be the same.
Look,
if
I think
you're
there's
right.
I think there is some real evidence that the sanctions are biting, that the sanctions are having some impact, certainly on the regime. They may, in the short term, be making them more desperate, but I don't think there's any doubt they're having some impact. They're not dissuading them from the nuclear course at the moment. Whether they're delaying them or not, I think is a matter of debate. But I think the truth of the matter, Peter, is that, well, there's I think a growing belief of a number of governments that my assessment is essentially correct. I think there's still a big uncertainty about what exactly to do. Trade sanctions are something that just about everybody agrees on at some level, and everybody is doing at some level. But beyond that, these are not easy questions for the world.
So what we have there is, now the way that came across was that Stephen Harper said, wait a second, Peter, now we have to explore all the peaceful options first before we march to war. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
Peter Mansbridge is apparently more enthusiastic for war with Iran than Stephen Harper.
Yeah, Peter Mansbridge is sold, man.
That's
like,
the
he's like, okay,
implication there,
yeah.
anyways.
So I'm totally sold on this. How come we're already not fighting? You know what I mean? And that's just such a dangerous thing for Mansbridge to be doing. Like, he has the trust of the Canadian people by virtue of the fact that he is the anchor for the CBC National. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to be spending your trust, the currency that you've developed using Canadian taxpayer dollars, no doubt, for these purposes is ethically indefensible. You know, makes you wonder. It makes you wonder who Peter Mansbridge is, who he's really serving. You know.
Yeah, it certainly does. There were a few things that were said there too. That have we already gotten to the point? Has he already said in this interview that the sanctions aren't working? Is that where Stephen Harper stopped him and said, "Oh no, wait, Peter. You know, there's
yes, yeah. That was right at the beginning of that clip. Yeah.
So not only that, but Peter Mansbridge has already said that the sanctions aren't working.
Yeah.
I mean,
it wasn't Stephen Harper that said that. It's Peter Mansbridge that said that. So why did he say that? Like, we really have to break that down and analyze what possible motive Peter Mansbridge could have had to conclude, based on nothing that's happened in this interview, as an unbiased journalist talking to our Prime Minister. He told our Prime Minister the sanctions are not working.
exactly.
Why did he do that?
And I have no idea, but the only thing I can say about that is absolutely ridiculous is, Peter Mansbridge doesn't live in Iran. He doesn't know what those sanctions are doing to Iran, or if he does, he's obviously not willing to admit it. But, there is a large portion of people that have analyzed a good portion of the whole saber rattling with Iran simply as an economic war. I mean, whether they eventually drop bombs or not, that would be a lot worse. But this is an economic war against Iran.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think that it probably is having some fairly serious effects.
And don't forget, it's not just Iran. It's the people that buy Iranian oil, such as China, right? The Americans require a lot of money every single day from China. They're running a deficit, not a debt, a deficit of $3 billion, over $3 billion a day, much of which China soaks up, right? And China's not going to do that forever. They're not going to keep the American boat afloat forever. America is always looking for leverage in China, and the Iranian oil is that leverage, right? They don't have to take it in order to keep China in line. They just have to threaten to take it, and demonstrate their absolute willingness to do it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my point. There is that that it's. It's a military and an economic thing, and like, you can't always separate, economic and military interests either. The military is violent, but economic war is violent too, because these sanctions are going to starve out Iranian children.
Yeah, and I certainly don't mean to intend that I don't believe that there will ever be a war against Iran. I'm not for it. I don't hope for it. That should be obvious. But if we look back through the patterns of recent military ventures by United States, Western powers, it starts with sanctions and leads to war. It's a game they play. They keep setting the bar higher and higher for people until the other country can't get over that bar, and that's the point when war is waged.
The most frustrating thing being in our position is that we'll never know. Like, we don't know what Vladimir Putin says to Hu Jintao behind the scenes.